Democrats replaced a candidate who is senile with a candidate who is actually incapable of having a coherent discussion.
58% of likely voters say Donald Trump is too old to be president. Very bad news for Donald Trump. The messaging that Donald Trump and his campaign have been putting forward earlier on this campaign has been flipped upside down.
After multiple disastrous public appearances, both Donald Trump and the Fox propaganda network appear to be well aware that both the evidence and the polls reflect the fact that Trump is not mentally fit to be president, because they're both insisting in weird rants the opposite. And Vice President Harris is pressing her advantage on this issue in glorious fashion. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, and it's going to be a fun one. And we're going to start with this one here, courtesy of the Fox Propaganda Network. This is Laura Ingraham, one of Trump's most devout acolytes on the network. And I want you to hear very carefully how she unironically describes the current state of the 2024 election.
Truth is, Democrats replaced a candidate who is senile with a candidate who is actually incapable of having a coherent discussion of economics, micro or macro, or foreign policy, or trade, or pretty much anything that is substantive when it has to do with politics.
Now, I know what you're thinking. When the hell did the Democrats replace their candidate with Donald Trump? Because the person she described, somebody who is incapable of speaking substantively about substantive political issues, that's Donald Trump. But she said it without any sort of self-awareness or irony. In her mind, she's referring to Vice President Harris, when again, those words better describe Donald Trump. In the aftermath of Donald Trump's disastrous, glitch-filled Twitter Spaces conversation with fellow right-wing whack job multi-billionaire Elon Musk, people have been commenting on how he was slurring and incoherent through most of the conversation. Well, Trump is now well aware of this, and he's apparently well aware of the perception, because this is what he ranted about on Truth Social. My conversation with Elon last night was heard by a record audience, and that was really something special, as Elon himself is very special. And I thank him for such a strong endorsement. Unfortunately, because of the complexity of modern day equipment and cell phone technology, my voice was, in certain areas, somewhat different and strange. Therefore, we have put out an actual and perfect recording of the situation or conversation. Enjoy. Donald Trump, nearing the stroke of midnight, is obsessed with how much everyone noticed his slurring, says James Singer on Twitter, rapid response manager for Vice President Harris. And as a matter of fact, the vice president dropped this video about Donald Trump, and it's pretty funny, and it's emblematic of how she is pressing her advantage on the perception that Trump is mentally unfit to be president.
I want to close up Department of Education. So stupid, stupid face. Stupid people, such stupid things.
We've endorsed JP, right? JD Mandel.
Since this whole scam started.
Think of it, a new branch of the United States military, United States Armed Forces, called Air Force. I never talked about that.
Of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies.
We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple.
You know, the biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right?
And what we saw at Pleasure, what a name right now. But what we just saw, we just left Pleasure.
One of the people at CNN said that was the greatest debate performance I've ever witnessed.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley, because of lots of things, like Nikki Haley, we would be in World War II.
So if you went through like a fully comprehensive compilation of Donald Trump's many gaffes and screw-ups, we'd be here for hours at a time, so they condensed it. But what they're doing is, again, right now, the vice president enjoys a colossal advantage, and hopefully it maintains, certainly if the electorate is rational. They recognize that the vice president is intelligent and mentally fit to be president, whereas Donald Trump isn't. And CNN recently did a segment on this, covering how in poll after poll after poll after poll, when this topic is broached, it is now working against Donald Trump. And hopefully the vice president will be able to maintain that momentum.
Is too old to be president or even run for president. Trump, 78, I think 3 years younger than President Biden, who was getting all the flack at the beginning. and 19 years older than Kamala Harris. What are voters saying about Trump's age now?
All right, so the age issue is one that was working for Donald Trump earlier on in this campaign when his opponent was Joe Biden. Why? Too old to be president. Look at this. 78% of voters said in May that Joe Biden was too old to be president. But now the age issue is working against Donald Trump. Why? Because Kamala Harris is now the Democratic nominee. Look at this. Just 11% of likely voters say Kamala Harris is too old to be president. Now, if we come on to the other side of the board, look at that difference with Donald Trump. Look at this now. 58% of likely voters say Donald Trump is too old to be president. Now, that's up a little bit from May when it was 53%, but that 53% compared to 78% looked pretty gosh darn good. But now that 58% compared to that 11% for Kamala Harris, very bad news for Donald Trump. The messaging that Donald Trump and his campaign have been putting forward earlier on this campaign has been flipped upside down.
She's only 50.
Glorious. It really is. So again, to put that in perspective, when President Biden was the presumptive Democratic nominee, he was polling pretty bad with respect to mental fitness. He was seen as less mentally fit than Donald Trump, even though I would argue the record of his presidency shows that he was more mentally fit. But whatever, it was a perception issue. And he was worse in terms of perception, according to poll after poll after poll. But also note, just to go back to it, again, as I've said in poll after poll after poll, even when Biden was the alternative, a majority of Americans very often in the polls said that Trump was too old to be president. He wasn't mentally fit to be president. But if you take those figures, there was, a 25% margin between these two things, right? 53% versus 78% for Biden. But now look, it's even greater. Now that Vice President Harris is the presumptive Democratic nominee, only 11% think that she's mentally unfit to be president, too old to be president. Whereas Trump, the number has increased from 53 to 58. Again, a decisive majority and a difference of 47 points? Meaning the perception between Harris and Trump is much greater, nearly double of what it was between Biden and Trump. That just goes to show how much of an enormous vulnerability this is for Trump, which is why the vice president is trolling Trump on his disastrous public appearances. And quite frankly, she should continue to do so. And she and her campaign and you and I need to continue to make this a campaign issue. We need to press this advantage. George Conway, lifelong Republican, ex-husband of Kellyanne Conway, top Trump advisor and campaign surrogate. This is what he had to say about Trump's recent disastrous public appearances and gaffes. This is what Conway has to say.
What we saw with this tweet yesterday is that last final collapse of Donald Trump's mental state. I mean, you think about it, saying that those were like 50, 60, 70,000 people in the aggregate in five rallies in different states. Jonathan Chait put this, of New York Magazine, put it this way today. It's like, that's loopier than saying that the moon landings were staged, because there were tens of thousands of people were there. And there are hundreds of people taking photographs and videos. You know, to think that is crazy and to try to sell it to people is just as crazy. He's done. His brain is fried.
Conway has been perhaps leading the charge. He has this psycho PAC, this anti-psycho PAC, super PAC. Basically, the whole purpose is to fundraise and to troll in mass media and multimedia the fact that Donald Trump is mentally unfit and stupid and unhinged. So this is kind of his like raison d'etre. This is his reason for political being, and he's very, very good at it. I want to circle all the way back to Laura Ingraham, though, because it's fun. She had in that same, episode where she dishonestly described the Democratic candidate as incapable of talking substance about politics and policy areas. She had a couple of weird statements and a couple of gaffes, and we're going to play just a couple of these clips for fun.
But we're not living in normal times. We have hardcore propagandists burrowed deep into every corporate media outlet out there. So they're not really reporters.
Laura Ingraham complaining about propagandists in corporate media. The irony is thick. Again, no sense of self-awareness whatsoever. Another clip, this one just of technical issues, because her show has been replete with these from the past several weeks. They featured in a couple of our videos. Others we have not featured, but this one's pretty funny too.
And that's the angle. Joining us now, and I'm delighted,
message directly to the voters in North Carolina. She's going to talk a lot about price gouging, how she's going to take on big corporate interests to make sure that she's putting consumers first. And look, she's very proud of her economic.
So Adrian Elrod was supposed to be there joining me now, and instead they accidentally cut to a compilation, or perhaps Laura Ingraham misread the teleprompter. It wouldn't be the first time that a prominent Trump supporter or Trump himself misread teleprompters while complaining about the other side reading or misreading teleprompters. All very funny. But the bottom line is we are seeing the evidence mounting and the polls reflecting that Donald Trump is not mentally fit to be president. And I think we all have an obligation to hammer that home. Also because it's funny to trigger MAGA with it. I mean, they were making the allegations and accusations against President Biden, and we're happy to do so. And now the script is flipped, and we should gladly press our advantage and do it with a smile. Let me know what you think in the comments.